My children, gather close and listen well, for the river that looks calm on the surface may be hiding crocodiles beneath. This is the story of Tina, a young woman whose footsteps led her to the door of a man that looked like gold on the outside, but was rotten within. Tina was in her early 20s, full of life, with dreams that shone brighter than the city lights. She came from a modest home, where every coin was stretched and every meal was a blessing. But the city has a way of whispering into young ears. Why suffer when comfort is only a choice away? One afternoon, under the sweltering heat, she met Mr. Douglas. He was in his early 60s, his hair touched with silver, his clothes neat and pressed like a man who had never known hunger. His smile was gentle, his voice deep and reassuring, and his eyes carried the calm confidence of a man who had seen the world and conquered it. They met at a restaurant where Tina worked part-time as a waitress. He had noticed her quiet grace, the way she moved quickly yet politely, her laughter that was soft like evening wind. That day, he left her a tip so generous it could pay her rent twice over. But more than the money, it was his warmth that drew her. Unlike other men who barked orders, Mr. Douglas spoke with respect. Soon he began to visit often. He would sit at his usual corner, order his tea, and ask about her day. Then one evening, he said words that would change Tina's life. "Why stress yourself here, my dear? You deserve more than struggling for coins. Let me take care of you." And like a seed planted in fertile soil, his words took root. Before long, Tina agreed to see him outside the restaurant. From then on, her life began to change. The man was generous beyond measure. The very week she mentioned that her phone was giving her trouble, he sent her a brand new iPhone the next morning, wrapped in shining paper like a gift from the heavens. The day she sighed about the stress of taking buses, he presented her with a small car, its paint shining under the sun as though it had just rolled out of a showroom. Her friends, Olivia and Grace, often teased her. "Tina, your sugar daddy has tried for you, oh. This one is not like others. You have entered jackpot." They laughed, sometimes in envy, sometimes in jest, but Tina defended him. "He is different. He is kind. He respects me." And indeed, it seemed so. He never raised his voice at her. He would check on her daily, asking if she had eaten, if she was safe, if she needed anything. Sometimes he shared stories of his business and even asked for her opinion. Unlike other men she had known, Douglas did not treat her as a plaything, but as someone who mattered. Slowly, Tina's heart softened toward him. It was no longer about the gifts. It was the way he made her feel, valued, cared for, even loved. She began to look forward to his calls, to his visits. She started to wonder if perhaps fate had smiled on her through this man. But my children, when the forest is too quiet, beware, for a hunter may be lurking. Even in her happiness, there was something about Mr. Douglas that puzzled her. It was his habit of always wearing hats. Not the fashionable kind, but soft beanies tied tightly around his head. Even when he was indoors, even when the air conditioners hummed in every room. Whether he was lounging, stepping out, or preparing for bed, a hat never left his head. At first, Tina thought little of it. Perhaps he was bald and shy about it. Perhaps it was just an old man's habit. Love, or what feels like love, can make people overlook the strangest things. And so she ignored it, letting comfort blind her to curiosity. But as the elders say, the eyes may look away, but the heart never forgets what it has seen. And that hat, that strange, ever-present hat, would soon reveal a secret darker than midnight. For now, Tina enjoyed her new life. A life of fine restaurants, weekend getaways, sparkling jewelry, and laughter. She had entered a world she once only dreamed about. She believed she had found not just a provider, but perhaps a destiny helper. But destiny is a tricky thing. What looks like a blessing can sometimes be a curse dressed in fine clothes. And so, Tina's journey with Mr. Douglas began. Sweet as honey on the lips, but already bitter at its core. Have you ever stepped into a place so grand that your feet trembled? Not because of fear, but because you knew you didn't belong? That is how Tina felt the day Mr. Douglas invited her to his mansion. The sun was sliding toward the west, painting the sky with strokes of orange and gold, when his driver arrived in a sleek black car to pick her up. The leather seats smelled of wealth, the tinted windows whispered of secrets, and the silence inside was so thick that Tina's heartbeat became the loudest sound she knew. "Relax," she whispered to herself, adjusting her simple dress. "He's just a man, not a god." But deep in her chest, her spirit shivered. When the car rolled into Douglas's estate, Tina's breath caught in her throat. The gates alone were taller than 3 men stacked on each other's shoulders. wrought with iron designs shaped like twisting snakes. Two guards bowed slightly as the car swept in. Beyond the gates, the compound stretched wide like a small kingdom. Lawns trimmed like soldiers on parade, fountains dancing with water, and birds carved out of stone spitting streams into a golden pond. My father's house never even had running water, Tina thought, her fingers gripping her handbag. And now I'm here. The car stopped before a house so enormous it seemed to touch the sky. A mansion dressed in marble, glass, and shadows. Every window glowed faintly with light though the evening had barely arrived, as if the house itself was awake, watching her. Douglas was waiting at the door. He was dressed as usual, crisp white shirt, gold wristwatch, shoes that clicked proudly on the tiled floor. And of course, his hat. Always that hat. A dark, wide-brimmed thing that sat on his head like a crown. Tina had never seen him without it. Not once. "You're welcome, my dear," Douglas said, his smile spreading like butter over hot yam. He extended his hand, and when Tina placed hers in his, she felt how soft his palms were, like someone who had never known hard labor. He led her inside. "Children, let me tell you." Tina had seen hotels, restaurants, and even wedding halls in the city, but nothing compared to Douglas's mansion. The floor beneath her feet gleamed like polished mirrors. Chandeliers hung above, heavy with crystal, pouring golden light over everything. Paintings of strange men in hats lined the walls, their eyes following her wherever she walked. Is this how the rich live? Tina thought, her steps small and cautious. Is this where my life is heading? Douglas guided her into a dining hall where a table longer than a bus stood waiting. Food covered it, jollof rice steaming in silver pots, fried chicken stacked high, wines from countries Tina had only read about. Servants in uniforms moved silently, their faces blank like carved masks. Tina ate, though her appetite was small. Douglas watched her closely, his hat still on his head, even as he tasted his wine. She found it strange. Why won't he take it off, she wondered. Even here, in his own home? After dinner, he showed her around. Every room was grander than the last. Bedrooms bigger than her entire apartment, wardrobes filled with clothes still bearing price tags, jewelry that sparkled brighter than the stars. Yet in every room, Tina noticed the same thing, hats. Hats hanging on racks, hats sitting on shelves, hats carefully boxed away. Wide-brimmed hats, narrow hats, black ones, gray ones, some even with feathers. It was almost as if the hats were more precious to him than the house itself. That night, Douglas offered her a guest room. The bed was soft enough to swallow her whole, the sheets smelled of lavender, and the curtains were so heavy they swallowed the moonlight. But sleep did not come easily, for in the silence of the mansion, Tina heard something. A scratching sound. Slow, faint, like something moving inside the walls. She sat up, listening, her heart knocking on her ribs. Then she saw the shadow under her door. Feet passing by. But what chilled her was not the shadow. It was the hat-shaped outline at the top. She lay back down, forcing herself to close her eyes. "It's just imagination," she whispered. But her spirit knew something was not right. "And so, my children, remember this. A house can be full of wealth, yet empty of peace. Not every shining floor hides joy. Sometimes, it hides secrets too heavy for the heart to carry. Listen closely, for in life, it is not every locked door you should open. Some doors hide things your eyes are not meant to see." The morning sun crept through the tall windows of Mr. Douglas's mansion, spilling golden light across the marble floors. Tina had decided to wake early. She wanted to prove herself useful. After all, she was not just another young girl chasing wealth. She told herself she was different. She wanted to be the woman who made Douglas proud. So, when she found the house staff missing from their duties, she picked up a duster and began tidying the sitting room herself. The mansion was vast, so vast that her footsteps echoed softly as she moved from room to room. Her fingers brushed over polished tables, over golden frames, over velvet chairs that looked untouched by time. Everything was spotless, almost too spotless, as if no one truly lived there. Yet, something tugged at her heart. Something was strange. As she reached the grand staircase, Tina noticed a tall oak wardrobe tucked into the hallway corner. She had walked past it several times before, but never dared to open it. That morning, curiosity pressed against her chest like a drumbeat. She pulled the wardrobe door open. Inside hung row after row of hats. Top hats, wide-brimmed hats, simple caps, even cowboy hats. Hats of every color, every fabric. They lined the wardrobe neatly, as if they were soldiers on parade. And each one, Tina realized, looked almost new, yet strangely old at the same time, their textures rough in odd places, their colors darker around the rims. She frowned, puzzled. "Why does one man need so many hats?" she whispered to herself. Her hand reached for a dark gray hat resting on the top shelf. She lifted it gently, intending to admire the stitching. But then, something moved. At first, she thought her eyes were deceiving her. But no, my children, it was not imagination. From the inside lining of the hat, a small white wriggle slithered out, then another, then another. Maggots. Dozens of them, fat and pale, squirming and falling one after another like grains of rice scattered on the floor. Tina gasped and dropped the hat instantly. It hit the polished wood with a dull thud, and more maggots spilled out, crawling in all directions. She stumbled back, her hand covering her mouth, her breath caught in her throat. Her mind screamed, "What kind of man keeps maggots in his hats?" Fear made her legs tremble, but curiosity held her still. Against her better judgment, she picked another hat, a black fedora. Slowly, cautiously, she turned it over. The same horror greeted her. Worms. Maggots. Rot that had no place in such a clean, beautiful mansion. Her heart pounded. Sweat broke out on her forehead despite the cold marble under her feet. She remembered something her grandmother once told her. "Child, when a fruit looks too sweet, cut it open first. For sometimes the rot hides inside." And here she was, standing before rot disguised as wealth. She stumbled back into the hallway, clutching her chest. She wanted to run, but something inside her whispered, "No one will believe you unless you have proof." Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone. She crouched low, filmed the hats, filmed the maggots crawling across the wardrobe floor. Every second of the recording made her stomach twist, but she kept going. "Let them see," she whispered. "Let them know I am not lying." Just then the air shifted. The house, once silent, seemed to groan. A creak echoed down the corridor, like footsteps on old wood. Tina froze, her ears straining. Was someone coming? She quickly closed the wardrobe, wiping sweat from her face, and shoved her phone back into her pocket. The sound grew louder, footsteps heavy and deliberate, descending the staircase. Her heart nearly leapt out of her chest. It was Mr. Douglas. He appeared at the bottom of the stairs, dressed in his usual flowing robe, his hat firmly on his head as always. His face was calm, too calm, but his eyes, oh my children, his eyes glowed with a strange sharpness, as though they already knew what Tina had seen. "Good morning, my dear," he said softly, his voice smooth like oil on water. "You are awake so early." Tina forced a smile, though her lips quivered. Yes, I just thought to help with the cleaning." Douglas studied her face for a long, unsettling moment. Then, without a word, he turned and walked toward the dining hall. But Tina knew. She knew he suspected. And from that day, her heart could no longer rest in that mansion. For she had discovered the secret that Mr. Douglas's hat was hiding, and the maggots had already begun to crawl into her life. My children, let me pause here. Remember this. Curiosity is good, but too much curiosity can dig up snakes. Tina had found the truth, but the truth was heavier than she could carry. It is one thing to suspect the truth, but it is another thing entirely to face it. That day, Tina's heart beat like a talking drum as she prepared to confront the man she thought she loved. The sun was setting when Douglas returned home. His shadow stretched across the tiled floor of the mansion as he stepped in, removing his gold wristwatch and dropping his keys on the marble counter. His ever-present hat, yes, that strange black hat, sat firmly on his head. Not even the evening heat could make him take it off. Tina stood in the living room, her hands trembling, her phone clutched tightly in her palm. She had recorded the crawling maggots she saw earlier that morning, the ones that spilled out of his hat box like rice infested with weevils. She replayed the video again, just to be sure she wasn't imagining things. The evidence was there. The horror was real. "Douglas," she began, her voice small, almost swallowed by the silence of the grand mansion. He turned, smiling at her with that same polished charm, the one that had first drawn her in. "Yes, my beautiful Tina? Did you miss me already?" She swallowed hard. The words caught in her throat, but she forced them out. What is inside your hats?" The smile faded. His eyes narrowed, sharp like the edge of a cutlass. "What did you say?" Tina's voice grew firmer. "I saw them. Maggots crawling from your hats. I cleaned your room. I know what I saw." For a moment, the air in the room seemed to grow heavier. Douglas stood still, his jaw tightening, the veins in his neck bulging. Then, in a slow, deliberate motion, he walked closer, his shoes clicking on the marble floor. Who told you to go through my things? His voice was no longer warm. It was cold, flat, and dangerous. Tina's legs felt weak, but she stood her ground. No one told me. I saw it with my own eyes. And I recorded it. Don't lie to me, Douglas. What kind of man keeps maggots in his hats? At that, something shifted in his face. The man who once laughed with her at dinners, who whispered sweet promises into her ear, was gone. In his place stood a stranger, his expression twisted, his eyes burning with something she could not name. You foolish girl, he hissed. Do you think you can understand things that are beyond you? Do you think your little phone can save you? His voice echoed in the vast living room like thunder rolling across a valley. Tina stepped back, clutching her phone tighter. Douglas, who are you really? What are you hiding from me? She demanded, her voice breaking but determined. Suddenly, he laughed, a laugh so hollow, so chilling, it made her skin crawl. He leaned close, so close she could see the sweat forming on his forehead beneath the brim of that black hat. Curiosity, he whispered, is the mother of destruction. Then, with a swift motion, he snatched the phone from her hand and hurled it against the wall. It shattered instantly, pieces scattering across the floor like broken shells. Tina gasped. My phone. You will speak of this to no one, Douglas warned, his tone final. What you saw does not exist. If you value your life, you will never open your mouth about it again. His face darkened, and for the first time, Tina felt the true weight of danger pressing down on her chest. She realized this was no longer the man she thought she knew. The gentle sugar daddy, the generous provider, the smiling companion, he was a mask, and behind that mask lived something monstrous. Tears welled in her eyes as fear consumed her. Douglas, please, what have you done to me? Why are you hiding this from me? But he did not answer. He simply waved his hand toward the door. Leave. Now. Tina hesitated, her body frozen between terror and disbelief. I said leave. His roar shook her to her bones. She ran, her slippers slapping against the marble, her heart racing as though it would burst. She didn't stop to look back until she was outside, gasping for air under the moonlight. My children, that was the night Tina's world truly began to crumble. For when the mask of kindness falls, the true face of evil is revealed. She had entered the lion's den thinking it was a palace, and now the lion had bared its teeth. What she did not yet know was that his warning was not empty. From that day forward, the torment would begin. The torment that no doctor, no money, no gift could save her from. When a snake bites, the poison does not stay on the fangs. It enters the body, slowly burning, spreading, destroying. That is how Tina's torment began, the day after Mr. Douglas threw her out of his mansion. At first, it was just a faint ache in her stomach. She thought maybe it was from stress or the tears she had cried all night. She lay on her bed in her small apartment, clutching her belly, telling herself, "It will pass, just give it time." But as the sun rose higher, the pain sharpened, twisting like a knife. By noon, she was sweating, her lips dry, her body trembling. Her friend Linda, who lived nearby, came running when she heard Tina screaming. "Tina, what is it? What happened?" Linda cried, rushing to hold her. Tina could barely speak. Her breath came in sharp gasps, her eyes wide with terror. And then, something happened that froze Linda's heart. When Tina stumbled to the bathroom, bent over the sink, something fell out of her body. Not blood, not water, but writhing maggots. Small, white, alive. They crawled against the sink's porcelain, twisting like cursed worms. Linda screamed so loud the neighbors came knocking. But Tina, weak and ashamed, begged her. "Don't tell them. Please don't tell anyone yet." But Linda was already trembling, whispering, "This is not ordinary. This is not sickness." That evening, they rushed Tina to the hospital. Doctors checked her blood, scanned her stomach, pressed their cold stethoscopes against her trembling body. They shook their heads, confused. "It looks like a severe infection," one said. "Maybe food poisoning?" another guessed. "But, my children, can food poisoning cause maggots to fall from a woman's body?" That night, Tina lay on a hospital bed, her body burning with fever. Nurses came and went giving injections, drips, tablets, but the pain only worsened. Her belly swelled as if something was growing inside. At times, she screamed, clutching the sheets. "Take it out! Take it out of me!" Linda sat by her side, refusing to leave. Her eyes never left Tina's face. She saw her friend's beauty fading, the glow of her skin now pale, the sparkle of her eyes dull, her laughter replaced by moans of torment. One morning, a young doctor entered the ward to check on her. As he pulled down the blanket, he froze. His eyes widened. "Nurse! Nurse, come quickly. From Tina's body, along her lower gown, the smell of decay rose. When the nurse pulled back the sheets, they all gasped in horror. Maggots, alive, crawling on the hospital bed. Tofi aqua, one of the nurses shouted, recoiling, making the sign of the cross. This is an abomination. The doctors whispered among themselves, their voices low but urgent. We have never seen anything like this. How can this be? But Tina could hear them. With tears in her eyes, she cried, Please help me. I don't want to die. Linda held her hand tightly. You will not die, my sister. We will fight this. We will find a way. For days, the hospital tried everything. Antibiotics, painkillers for drips, surgeries. Nothing worked. The maggots kept coming. The pain kept spreading. Nurses began to avoid her bed, whispering superstitions. Some said she had angered the gods. Others said she had slept with a man who carried death in his blood. And children, they were not far from the truth. One night, as Tina lay weak, drifting between sleep and pain, she saw him. Mr. Douglas. He was not in the room, but she felt his presence like smoke in the air. In her vision, he stood at the foot of her bed, wearing his strange hat. His face was hidden, but she heard his laughter, low, cold, mocking. Tina, the voice echoed in her mind. I warned you. You should never have questioned me. Now you belong to me. She screamed and woke up, her body shaking violently. Nurses rushed in, but by then he was gone. Only his laughter lingered in her ears. Linda, sitting beside her, wiped her tears. This man has tied you with something darker than sickness. This is not hospital work anymore. This is not medicine. This is spiritual. And indeed, children, that was the truth. For no matter how many injections the doctors gave, no matter how many drips they set, Tina's condition only worsened. Her life had become a battlefield between science and the unseen world. The torment had just begun. For when a sickness refuses every cure, you must know that the matter is no longer of flesh and blood, but of spirit and shadow. Tina's pain grew sharper by the day. It was no longer just cramps or fever. It was as if 1,000 tiny mouths were chewing her from the inside. Sometimes, in the dead of night, she would scream and clutch her stomach, rolling on the hospital bed as her friends and nurses looked on helplessly. One morning, after a particularly violent episode, the doctors decided to conduct a deeper test. They wheeled her into a room filled with bright lights, screens, and the cold smell of antiseptic. Tina lay trembling, praying silently, as machines hummed around her. When the results came, the younger doctors exchanged glances, their lips tightening, their eyes darting nervously. None of them dared to speak. At last, the chief physician, a gray-haired man with years of experience etched into his face, cleared his throat. My colleagues, he said quietly, come and see. On the monitor, they all saw it. Her womb, the very place meant to nurture life, was instead crawling with maggots. Not one or two, but swarms, moving like white worms in rotten fruit. Impossible, whispered one of the young doctors. This cannot be. She is alive, not a corpse. How can this be happening? The senior doctor shook his head slowly. I have practiced medicine for 40 years, he said, his voice heavy. I have seen cancers spread like fire. I have seen infections eat through flesh. But this is not science. This is not disease. This is something else. The room grew silent, the beeping of the machines suddenly louder. Even the air seemed to pause. They called Tina's friends aside. We will try what we can, they said. But you must know, this is beyond us. If science bows its head, then perhaps the spirit world holds the answer. When Tina was told, tears rolled down her cheeks. But doctor, she whispered, clutching his hand, you are my last hope. Please don't abandon me. The doctor's eyes softened. My daughter, he said gently, sometimes the battle is not ours to fight. Sometimes what you carry is not of this world. Go home. Seek wisdom beyond hospitals. Seek prayers, seek cleansing. Science can only go so far. The words fell like heavy stones in Tina's heart. Her friends, shaken to their bones, tried to comfort her. One of them muttered, It must be Douglas. That man is not human. No wonder he always wore that strange hat. Another whispered, Maybe he has given her to spirits. Maybe she is paying the price for his wealth. Whispers spread, as they always do. Soon, even the nurses began avoiding Tina's room, crossing themselves when they passed, as if she carried a curse. At night, Tina lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The pain would return in waves, sharp and merciless, but worse than the pain was the fear. She remembered Douglas's cold eyes when she had confronted him. She remembered his words, his sudden fury, the way he threw her out as though she was nothing. It was then she understood. She had slept in the bed of a serpent, and now the venom had entered her body. Her mother was called from the village. When she arrived, she rushed into the hospital room, wailed, and fell on her knees beside her daughter's bed. She held Tina's frail hands and cried, "Who has done this to my child? Who has traded her womb for worms?" The doctors stood aside, helpless. They tried strong medicines. They tried surgery to flush out the infestation. For a brief moment, they thought they had succeeded, but within days the maggots returned, crawling again inside her. One night, after another failed attempt, the senior doctor came quietly to Tina's mother. His voice was low, almost fearful. "Madam," he said, "take your daughter away from here. Not because we do not care, but because what hunts her cannot be cured with blades and drugs. This is spiritual. Seek those who can wrestle with shadows. If you delay, you may lose her." And so the seed of fear grew into certainty. The doctors, the very men of science who the city respected, had admitted defeat. My children, let me pause here and tell you. When doctors bow their heads and science runs away, you must know that the battle is no longer with flesh, but with the unseen. Not every sickness comes from germs. Some come from the wickedness of men. Tina's mother held her daughter that night and whispered in her ear, "We will not let you die here, my child. Tomorrow I will carry you home." And so, the journey back to the village began. Not just a journey of miles, but a journey from the world of men to the world of spirits, where the real war was waiting. My children, open your ears and listen carefully, for this chapter is like a shadow that refuses to leave the wall. When the senior doctor shook his head and whispered, "This is beyond science," Tina's world cracked like clay left too long under the sun. Fear wrapped around her, but anger also grew inside her chest. She wanted answers, and the only man who could give them was Mr. Douglas, the man with the strange hat. So one morning, with her hands trembling but her heart burning, she walked into the police station. She told them everything. The mansion, the endless gifts, the hat that never left his head, the maggots that now cursed her womb. The officers listened with skepticism at first, but when she showed them the faint scars of her recent surgeries and described the torment in detail, their faces hardened. One of them, Inspector Jonah, leaned back and muttered, "If half of what you're saying is true, then this man is dangerous. We'll check it out." And so, a police van rolled out with Tina inside, her body weak but her spirit restless. The road stretched endlessly, dust rising in thin clouds behind them. Her mind replayed the laughter of Douglas, the smell of his perfumes, the weight of his gifts. Each memory now felt like a chain dragging her deeper into darkness. When they reached the mansion gates, Tina's heart stopped. The once sparkling compound, with trimmed hedges and bright lights, was now a graveyard of silence. The iron gates hung loosely, one side bent as though it had not been touched for years. Grass grew wild, pushing through cracks in the driveway. The fountain that once danced with water now stood dry and broken, filled with algae and mosquitoes. "Is this the place?" Inspector Jonah asked, his eyes scanning the ruin. Tina swallowed hard. "Yes, this is it." The policemen exchanged uneasy glances. They pushed the gates open, their boots crunching against dry leaves. Inside, the mansion looked like the carcass of an abandoned beast. Windows shattered, paint peeling, cobwebs hanging from the once grand balconies. The air smelled of dust and forgotten things. One officer muttered, "This place looks like nobody has lived here in years." But Tina shook her head violently. "No, I was here last week. The house was alive, shining, full of servants, full of light." They moved cautiously inside. The grand living room, which Tina remembered glowing with marble floors and chandeliers, was now a skeleton of cracked tiles and broken furniture. The walls bore dark stains, as though smoke or something worse had kissed them. "Check the bedrooms," Inspector Jonah ordered. Room by room they searched, but what they found only deepened the mystery. Dust inches thick lay on the floor, undisturbed. Doors creaked open like the cries of old spirits. In the master bedroom, the wardrobe stood open, but inside hung only decayed, moth-eaten clothes. And yet, in the corner, resting on a broken dresser, lay a hat. Black, wide-brimmed, untouched by time. Tina gasped. Her knees weakened. That is his hat. I know it. He never removed it." One officer stepped forward to pick it up, but the inspector barked, "Leave it. Don't touch what you don't understand." The air grew heavy, as if unseen eyes were watching. A cold wind whispered through the cracked windows. Even the policemen, Strong men who had faced armed robbers and violent criminals now looked uneasy, their fingers brushing against their holsters. And then Tina remembered her phone. "I recorded him," she cried. "I recorded the maggots crawling from his hats. I saved everything." She pulled her phone from her bag, her hands shaking with hope. If they doubted her, the video would prove it. But when she opened her gallery, nothing. Her heart stopped. Every photo, every video connected to Douglas was gone. The folders empty. A black screen mocked her with silence. "No, no, no, no!" Tina screamed. Tears burned her eyes. "I swear I had them. They were here." Inspector Jonah frowned. He took the phone, checked it himself, but found nothing. "Madam, are you sure you didn't delete them yourself?" Tina collapsed to the dusty floor, sobbing. I didn't. He's doing this. He's not human, he's not." The officers looked at each other, unease growing like a sickness in the room. Finally, Jonah motioned to his men. "We're leaving. This place is wrong. We'll file a full report." As they escorted Tina out of the ruined mansion, the hat still sitting untouched in the shadows, a crow cawed loudly from the rooftop, its echo stretching into the evening sky. And that, my children, is when Tina realized the truth. She had stepped into the lair of something that was never fully alive, never fully dead. A man who walked in shadows. A man who wore a hat not for fashion, but to hide a curse too deep for human eyes. The mansion was empty, yes, but the emptiness itself was a warning. When a tree is sick, you may cut away its branches, but if the roots are poisoned, the sickness will always grow back. That was Tina's life after the police discovered that Mr. Douglas's mansion was nothing but an empty ruin. One would think that after the surgeries, after the doctors had scraped away the rot from her womb, the torment would have ended. But no, sometimes suffering is not of the flesh alone. Sometimes it hides in the spirit, where no knife can cut. Tina lay in the hospital bed, her body weak, her heart broken. She had lost something more precious than rubies, her womb. The doctors told her gently, "You will never carry children again." She stared at the ceiling, silent tears soaking her pillow. In her mind, she whispered, "What sin did I commit to deserve this? Was it love that brought me here, or greed?" But before she could even finish mourning, the torment returned. The crawling sensation in her belly did not stop. Nurses swore they saw small, wriggling things slip out of her wounds only to vanish before their eyes. Doctors argued among themselves. Some said it was hallucination, others whispered it was witchcraft. One night, as the moon glowed pale through the hospital window, Tina screamed until her voice broke. She clutched her stomach and rolled on the floor. Nurses rushed in and saw what froze their hearts, live maggots crawling out of her skin. Not from any wound, no. From her pores, her very flesh. "My God!" one nurse cried, throwing down her gloves. "This is not medicine. This is a curse." The chief surgeon, an elderly man with silver hair, gathered the doctors in the ward the next morning. He spoke words that chilled everyone. "We have done all we can. Her body is not failing. It is her spirit that has been chained. This is no longer science. This is spiritual." And so, reluctantly, they released Tina to her family. Her mother wept as she wrapped her weak body in cloth. Her father, his face hardened by shame and fear, muttered only, "We must go back. We must take her to the village. For in the city, there are many hands but few with true power." Back in the village, where the earth remembers old footsteps and the trees whisper secrets to the wind, maybe, just maybe, an answer could be found. The journey was long. Tina lay in the back seat, groaning in pain, her eyes hollow. Each bump in the road felt like knives cutting through her belly. Yet she endured, for she had no choice. When they arrived in the village, the sight of her shocked the elders. Once a radiant young woman, full of laughter and beauty, she was now a shadow of herself. Thin, pale, and haunted. Some women covered their mouths in pity. Others whispered, "This is what comes when a child follows sugar daddies." Ah, my children, let me pause here. Do you see how quick tongues are to judge? They forgot that even a chicken that wanders too far into the bush does not invite the hawk. Sometimes danger comes uninvited. Back in her father's compound, Tina lay on a raffia mat, staring at the cracked ceiling. Every night, she heard whispers in her dreams. Dark voices mocking her, chanting her name. And always, the image of Mr. Douglas in his strange hat, grinning with maggots crawling around his lips. The village elders wasted no time. They summoned traditional healers. First came the herbalist, who burnt incense and sprinkled ashes around her body. He chanted incantations until sweat dripped from his brow. But when he finished, Tina still wailed in pain. Next came the bone diviner. He cast cowries on the floor, his eyes rolling back as he muttered. Finally, he spoke. This is not the work of man alone. The one who tied her has mixed darkness with wealth. It is deeper than roots, deeper than bones. Days turned to weeks. Each attempt brought hope, but the torment only grew worse. At night, Tina's cries echoed through the compound. Children covered their ears. Her mother grew gaunt from lack of sleep. Her father wandered aimlessly, ashamed that his daughter was the subject of gossip in every courtyard. Finally, one afternoon, the eldest healer in the region came to see her. His voice was rough like gravel, his staff heavy in his hands. After looking at Tina, he sighed deeply and said words that silenced the compound. This girl is walking with death. We cannot save her with herbs and charms. What holds her is not of this world. It belongs to the spirits of blood and sacrifice. If you want her to live, you must look beyond us. It was the first time her parents admitted defeat. Their hearts trembled as the healer pointed toward another path. Take her to the place of prayer. Take her where light is greater than darkness. For only the Spirit of God can break chains like this. And so, with no other choice left, Tina's parents prepared to seek a different kind of healing. Not from the ancestors, not from herbs or chants, but from the power of faith. Little did Tina know, her darkest night was about to lead her toward the dawn. Sometimes when doctors close their books and science bows its head in defeat, only faith can speak where reason is silent. That was the road Tina now faced. After the hospital sent her home broken, without a womb and without hope, her parents carried her back to the village. She was a shadow of herself, thin, pale, and trembling, her eyes hollow as if the maggots had eaten not just her flesh but her spirit. Her mother wept often, saying, "What kind of hand has touched my child? What evil have we unknowingly embraced?" But her father, though shaken, remained strong. He told his wife, "The river that swallows cannot swallow forever. One day it must spit out its shame." So they took her from one traditional healer to another. The first smeared her with white chalk, muttered incantations, and tied charms around her waist. For a moment, Tina felt relief. Yet by nightfall, the same worms crawled out of her sores, and she screamed until dawn. The second healer demanded a goat, a cock, and 7 cowries. He sacrificed them, declaring, "The curse is broken," but the curse only laughed. Within days, Tina nearly lost her life from unbearable fevers. Her parents grew weary. Her mother cried, "Is my daughter already among the dead?" But her father reminded her, "A tree may bend, but it does not break if its roots are deep." It was then that a whisper spread in the village. An old preacher named Reverend Elijah had returned home after many years abroad. He was no longer a young man. His hair was white as cotton, his back slightly bent, but his voice carried the firmness of thunder. Some mocked him, saying he was just another man pretending to have answers. But others said his prayers had healed the hopeless. Tina's father did not waste time. One morning, they carried her to Reverend Elijah's small, humble hut near the edge of the forest. Unlike the other healers, he asked for no money, no goat, no cowries. He simply looked at Tina, then lifted his eyes to the sky and sighed deeply. "My child," he said gently, "your battle is not with flesh and blood. What clings to you is not sickness but covenant. Someone joined you to a spirit that feeds on your life. But hear me, light is stronger than darkness always." Tina, too weak to speak, only nodded faintly. From that day, Elijah prayed with her every morning and every night. He sang hymns softly as he laid hands on her head. At first, the torment grew worse. Her screams filled the nights, and her parents almost gave up. But Elijah told them, "Do not be afraid when darkness shakes. It is the sign that its grip is weakening." One evening, a young woman named Grace came to visit. She was cheerful, her eyes bright with hope. She sat beside Tina and told her, "I too was once in chains. I thought I would die, but when I turned my eyes to the one who gives life, I was set free. Hold on, sister. Hold on." Those words sank deep into Tina's heart. For the first time, she believed her story might not end in shame. That very night, Tina had a dream unlike any before. She found herself standing in a vast desert, weak and thirsty. Ahead of her stood Douglas, the man with the strange hat. His face was no longer charming but rotten, with worms crawling through his eyes. He stretched out his hand and hissed, "You belong to me." But suddenly, a blinding light appeared. From it came a tall figure robed in white, with eyes like fire. The figure spoke, "This one is no longer yours. Leave her." At once, Douglas shrieked and fell backward, his hat burning to ashes. When Tina woke up, her body felt light, as if chains had fallen off her shoulders. For the first time in months, she ate without pain. For the first time in months, she slept without nightmares. Her parents wept with joy, and Reverend Elijah lifted his hands, declaring, "When light enters, darkness must bow." My children, remember this. Just as night cannot swallow the day, so evil cannot swallow one who clings to the truth. That night was the beginning of Tina's healing. She was not yet completely free, but a door had been opened. The curse was losing its power, and deep inside she knew. The man with the strange hat would one day be judged. For a story is not complete until its tail touches the ground, and every secret is brought into the light. After many moons of torment, after sleepless nights filled with tears and prayers, Tina's healing became complete. Her skin, once pale from endless hospital beds, now glowed again. Her steps, once heavy with sorrow, became firm. Her voice, once trembling, carried strength. She did not just heal in body, she healed in spirit. And when she returned to the city, she was no longer the same woman who once believed every gift wrapped in gold was a blessing. Her story spread like wildfire. In churches, in marketplaces, even at bus stops where strangers gathered, her name was whispered. That is Tina, the girl who fought the man with the strange hat. Mothers warned their daughters. Fathers warned their sons. People leaned in close whenever she spoke, for her testimony carried weight heavier than iron. But the tale was not yet finished, for the shadow of Mr. Douglas still lingered. Authorities who once dismissed Tina's case as a woman's foolishness now reopened their files. New witnesses came forward, maids who had once worked for Douglas, men who claimed he lured them into his house and vanished for days. A network of investigators traced his movements and, like ants following a trail of sugar, they found him. Far away, across the ocean in a foreign land, Mr. Douglas had been hiding under another name. His wealth still flowed, but his shadow had grown darker. He wore new hats, yet the stench of decay followed him wherever he went. People said his businesses thrived, but wherever he went, sickness followed. And then justice knocked on his door. Douglas was arrested. His mansions were raided. His secret rooms, filled with ritual objects, were exposed. There were altars drenched in candle wax, photographs of countless young women, and boxes filled with hats. Each one carrying an odor so foul, even the officers covering their noses could not hide their disgust. When they questioned him, he laughed at first, mocking the foolishness of men who thought wealth had no price. But soon the mask fell from his face. He confessed. Yes, his power, his money, his influence. All had been bought with rituals too dark for the sun to shine upon. He admitted to making pacts that required the bodies of women, their wombs, their very life force. The room grew cold as he spoke. Reporters who came to cover the story later wrote that it was as though the air itself rejected his words. And then, my children, judgment came. In his prison cell, Douglas was found one morning screaming in agony. His body shook violently, his hands clawing at his own skin. Guards rushed to his side, but what they saw froze their hearts. From his mouth, from his ears, even from beneath his fingernails, maggots began to crawl, just as Tina had once described. His final cries were not of power or arrogance, but of terror. His wealth, his titles, his strange hats, none of them could save him from the harvest of the seeds he had sown. By nightfall, he was gone. His corpse, they say, was so covered in worms that not even the strongest officers could bear to look at it twice. And thus, the man with the strange hat came to his end, not by the hand of man, but by the judgment of the unseen. Tina lived on, not as a victim, but as a messenger. She told her story in schools, in gatherings, in churches, always ending with the same words. Not every smile is friendly. Not every gift is clean. Some wealth is paid for with blood. Some kindness hides a dagger. Be mindful of the people you let into your body, your heart, and your home. And so, my children, the drumbeat of this tale must now rest. Carry its wisdom in your heart. That quick riches can be poison honey. That beauty can be a trap. And that the darkness of men will one day be judged under the sun. For the truth is this: the grave swallows both the poor and the rich, but only the righteous leave a legacy worth remembering. Not every gift is a blessing. Be mindful of the people you let into your life. For wealth without peace is a curse, and love without light is death in disguise. A wise person knows that glitter is not always gold, and a sweet tongue may hide a poisoned heart. My children, remember this: a hat may cover the head, but it cannot cover the truth. Guard your soul, guard your body, and above all, guard your destiny. If this story has touched your heart, do not let it end here. Leave a comment below and tell us what lesson you have learned. Click the like button so this story may travel far, and subscribe so you will never miss another tale. For more African wisdom and stories that open the eyes, stay with us. The journey continues.